The grand vision for a fleet of Australian-built nuclear submarines comes with the promise of more than 8,000 South Australian jobs. Today, the federal and South Australian government signed a cooperation agreement at the Adelaide shipyards, where 8 nuclear submarines will be built.
There's no doubt that this decision will provide for South Australia a remarkable investment in the economy, a remarkable opportunity for workers to get into very high-skilled, secure, long-term employment.
The South Australian State Government stands fully committed to work with the federal government to ensure that this massive endeavour, this unprecedented enterprise of building nuclear submarines in South Australia is done on time.
Promises are viewed very sceptically because promises don't always come through, as we know.
Former shipyard worker Corey Vandertook is treating the promise of a jobs boom with caution after years of delays and major changes to plans for a replacement submarine fleet.
People feel like they can't trust every announcement that comes out because they don't know what the next government or the government after that are going to bring in.
How can people be confident that this time it will be different?
Fair question. Look, our national interest demands that we do this.
We know that key to that is workforce and skills. That's something no government has had a plan for. We have a plan and we are committed to delivering it.
The assurances follow hundreds of redundancies at the Adelaide shipyards over recent years. In 2018, Corey took a package because construction work dried up.
We had 300 electricians here on the ASC, on the shipbuilding side at one stage. We're now down to about 40 electricians. The workforce here is very skilled. It isn't skills you can pick up immediately. That's why it's important that we keep as many of the workforce as we can here.
The federal government says it will avoid mistakes of the past by starting preparations for the AUKUS submarine build immediately, including setting up a new skills and training campus in Adelaide, along with extra university places.
This is an important decision, first and foremost a national security decision, but it's also a decision that means many, many jobs for South Australians, for Western Australians and indeed for workers around the country.
The UK is scheduled to build the initial AUKUS submarine, with the first Australian boat to be delivered in the early 2040s. Former Senator and submariner Rex Patrick says too much uncertainty remains around the agreement.
The British have been very disorganised in terms of their submarine industry. Unfortunately, these are long-term programs. We will see 3 or 4 Australian governments before we see a first AUKUS submarine, and in fact we'll see a number of different governments both in the US and the UK.
The prospect of getting a slice of the $368 billion AUKUS program has put a spring in the step of Australian defence suppliers.
Peter, how you going?
The opportunity for a little sheet metal business at the bottom end of the world supplying to major league heavy infrastructure projects around the world is truly exciting.
Cameron Johnston invested time and money to win work on the French submarine project and was disappointed when it was abandoned by the coalition in 2021. This time he's looking for a guarantee.
So I did have to dust myself off. I became a little bit more wary about defence opportunities. I think what we as suppliers, or indeed myself as a supplier to the defence industry, really need is a high degree of certainty that this is now the line in the sand, that it's now down and we can all start to make decisions around that.
The short-fin Barracuda Block 1A, designed specifically for the Royal Australian Navy, is the world's most advanced conventionally powered submarine.
Under the French attack class submarine program, 60% of the contract value was to be spent in Australia.
This project will create around 20,000 jobs. And importantly, in the dockyard right here, this project will deliver around twice as many jobs as the attack class project would have delivered.
The federal government can't yet say how much involvement local suppliers will have in the AUKUS program.
We will be working on those issues as we determine the build strategy over the course of the next 18 months.
The simple reality is there are established supply chains in the United Kingdom and the United States. However, the onus is on the Australian government to negotiate with the governments of the United States and the United Kingdom to make sure that there is fair and equitable work for Australian companies in this program. I think the Australian public will demand that. I know Australian industry will demand that. And of course, we will hold the government to account to ensure that they achieve it.
Corey Vandertook continues to support his former colleagues at the shipyards. He says it would be a proud day for workers to have a new submarine roll off the Adelaide production line, about 40 years after the last.
I do miss working in shipbuilding. I did like being in the shipbuilding industry, and I do hope one day I can come back.